Alright folks, welcome back. We're here for yet another campaign diary. As always, I'm Peter, I'm the DM, and for this exercise I am God. So when last we left our heroes... So in the last episode, basically two things happened. Esmeralda, Hazel Elias's character, died, turned to stone by the Death Tyrant, and our two other heroes made it back safely to Oovrengah after a bit of a tedious journey. So when we kicked things off this session, we had everybody here except Brayden, which worked out. I think it was okay. So they start off in Oovrengah, and basically the first thing that happened is I handed them the map. I said, "All right, you guys are at Oovrengah," and the people just kind of I gave a quick rundown again to basically to Sonia and to Sam who had not been here for the last session. Basically the damage that had been done to the place, the hole in the library, the fact the library was a bit of a ruffled up. I'm going to sneeze 2 seconds. Thank you. And other such, some of the broken windows, some of the singed, other singed parts, and the damage in general. And basically, this was an interesting session. I had anticipated this session to be basically the party comes, they do a little bit of things. They were going to meet some NPCs, and then they were going to go head off for Renovas. That was what I expected. Half of that happened. The party starts off, and immediately I hand them the paper, and immediately Sonia's like, "Oh, can I make this my room?" She points to a room on the map, an empty room, and I said, "Well, sure, you can make that your bedroom." She's like, "Sweet, okay." Oh, and they basically start renovating the house, and they kind of were just kind of going. They were just focusing on who's gonna sleep where, and oh, here's what I kind of want to do with my house. They're getting each other to help each other with their different rooms and stuff like that. And after about 20 minutes, I was like, okay. Sonia, in the middle of in the middle of your work, you hear a person behind you, hear a voice behind you, stop what you're doing. And she turns around, and there's a guy, holding a sword up, and he's just kind of a little shakily, but he's kind of pointing at her, what are you doing? Kind of, he's clearly, a little startled and stuff like that. And Sonia, she starts talking to him, and she finds out that he, basically, to sum up what everything is going on, she finds out that he's a refugee, that, he, and she kind of, she gives a little bit of information. She's like, "Hey, I work for Fritzless." She pulls out her badge, she worked for Bartholomew. She pulls out her badge. The guys, he's like, okay, he's being like, "Oh, thank goodness. Oh, thank goodness. Yeah. Oh, gosh." And this is where they didn't quite get the hero praise back from when they, did their heroic charge two sessions ago with all this saving the civilians from the town. So this is where I kind of wanted to this is where I brought it back. And this had been my original intention. If they had skipped the village, 2 sessions back, then this is what I was going to do. I was going to put a bunch of people, in Oovrengah, and they were going to be, refugees. And that way the players could kind of get this, this bit of hero worship, really. They could get this kind of, civilians being like, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. You could save us. Hallelujah." And that's basically what happened. This guy's like, "Oh, there's a bunch of people." He comes and gets them, He goes down, he gets them, he kind of brings them out of hiding. Turns out they had been playing a bit of almost a cat and mouse game in the place of been hiding from the players that they had been roaming around, because they were still unsure, are these guys good guys or bad guys? And of course, finding that they used to work for Bartholomew in his private militia. These guys are clearly good guys, and they're like, "Okay, we trust you." And again, they kind of started talking to people, and this session basically turned into entirely the party basically renovating and building up Oovrengah. They turned it into a small little base of operations, and that wasn't quite what I had intended. Again, I had originally intended this to be them kind of show up, they talk to some NPCs, and they ride for Renovas. And I admit, when they started doing this, I was a little upset. I was a little kind of frustrated. I was kind of like, "Okay, you guys going to go to Renovas?" They're like, "Well, yeah, we're going to go to Renovas, but to get supplies." Okay, and that that met with mixed results. It was an interesting it was a bit of an interesting session, and I'll keep going. Basically, they talked to people, and they kind of started not interrogating them, but they kind of found out, okay, a little bit, okay, what happened? Well, the refugees, they explained they had been in another village that had been ransacked by Fritzless soldiers. They had come, rounded up a bunch of the people, and taken them away. This was just 2 families that had made it escaped alive. One was a younger couple. The other one was a family had 3 kids with them. and they made it. They made it here, where they kind of heard rumors, if you will. They just of some place where they could go. And they made it kind of this just abandoned house, and so they're like, we can live safely here. And of course, the players are like, well, yeah, please, you guys are more welcome to stay here. And they start asking, do you guys have any skills? Well, it turns out, the younger guy he's a barrel maker, basically. I can't remember the actual name, but he makes barrels, basically. The other guy is actually a blacksmith. He was a blacksmith's apprentice, is what he was. That was just the younger guy. The young guy was the blacksmith's apprentice. The older guy had made barrels. And everybody's like, oh, sweet. So the one guy can work wood. The other guy can, work metal. Sweet. And they're like, okay. So they sent the cart with a couple players and said, all right, go to Renovaz, go pick up supplies. And they basically made a huge list. Okay, we need food. We need materials to start a forge. We're going to need an anvil. We're going to need a bunch of supplies, start a forge. We're going to need mattresses if we can get them. And it was kind of interesting. They made a shopping list, and it took them a while to kind of say, yes, this is our shopping list. I mean, I think they spent almost 20 minutes just making the shopping list alone. Then they had to go, and I basically kind of, I started fast forwarding through some of the stuff, because I was kind of like, I want to get them to I want to get them to Renovas. I want them to get to Renovas so we can kill Fritzl, so we can get this over with, so we can kind of open things up from there. And I think this is, again, a bit of my, trying to railroad things a little bit. Trying to, keep them on the rail so they can keep moving. That way I can get them to the junction. That way they can go to wherever the heck they want. And they kind of kept resisting a little bit. And I got frustrated a little bit. But so they got the supplies. They come back. The guy sets up his forge. He starts, working for them. They decide, oh, well, we're in the middle of a forested area, so we'll have Scavis with Executioner cut down trees, and we can use that to get wood. And they start building up. They start building an entire little almost barracks kind of thing. And not barracks as in kind of actually house soldiers, but just kind of that same thing. A long house that could hold a bunch of people. And they, the two families, started living in the small servants' house that already existed. Some more people showed up even, actually. About halfway through the session, Hazel Lies finally was ready with her character. She said, okay, well, they said, I don't know if Elias watches this channel, but she's goes by Elias now, and I have to call her a they, and it's still working on it. But they sorry, brain farting. They went to the nearby village, and they started sowing rumors. Elias's new character is a rogue, is a halfling rogue, and they went to the nearby village, started sowing rumors, kind of the safe haven. And I knew this was going to have two benefits. This was going to have two effects. One is that a bunch of new refugees would come, and sure enough, as a couple days later, a bunch of refugees kind of show up, and they kind of said, hey, we heard that there was a safe place here, and the party's like, absolutely. And this is why they built the longhouse. Oh, okay, clearly we're going to have more people show up. We need to do this. And they started working on all sorts of stuff. One guy was they had a farmer and his wife show up. They started a farm. There's an orchard at Oovrengah. They started kind of tending that as well, looking at tearing up kind of some of it. I explained that kind of this is actually starting to be in the middle of winter almost, so you guys are going to have to kind of deal with the fact that you guys are going to have to get some food for the winter. And they said, okay, well, that's why we'll buy more supplies. So we'll buy more food already prepared. That way, that's not a concern the same way. And that's what they did. They kind of made another trip. They got some more stuff. They got more food. They got some animals. Some of the people managed to bring a couple sheep and pigs, and they even got a cow at one point. And so now they worked on building what's called a fence, a pen, basically, where they could keep all their animals. So now on their map of Oovrengah, they now have the house, they have a forge, they have the servant's house, they have their kind of their long house where everyone stays. They've got the orchard farm, and they've even got a place for all their animals and such. And that was basically what they did for most of the session. For about the 4 hours we played, 3.5 hours of it was just them, as Danny put it, playing SimCity. And then towards the end, what I did is I threw in another group of people arrive, and with them is a guy riding a horse, and he's certainly older, but he's also wearing armor, and the party goes to talk to him, and he's like, oh, it was good to see you. Finally, you have returned. And this is General Jerome. This is one of the guys who was giving them orders way back in the beginning of the campaign. And he describes, hey, what the heck, guys? What are you guys doing? And this was kind of me telling the players to get your butts out of Oovrengah, go to Renovas. And this is where, again, we had a little, I won't say conflict, but again, I think a misalignment in goals. And Jerome tells them that, hey, Fritzless has been gathering people up. My spy networks say he's holding them in the castle for some ritual. And the players are like, yep, that's what we heard as well. And he's like, and you guys need to go take care of this. And the players are like, all right, fine, we'll go take care of it. But first we should scout the area out. So of course they're like, all right, if we're gonna scout the place, we're gonna go send some of our sneakier characters. They send their new rogue. They send Gray, and they send Danny as well. Okay, Danny's maybe not super sneaky, but he's a good deception. He's good at charisma. He can probably help get some information out. And they sent them to Renovas. And they told them, we're going to go into, bars and stuff like that. We're going to go kind of inns and stuff and start talking to people. And this was, again, about the last half hour of the session. So they talked to people. Oh, God, Narcissus is coming soon. I hate sneezing because of course it's May, it's kind of starting to be almost kind of started the allergy season almost, so that's being a fun part. Point is, so they come to these taverns, these inns, and bars, and they start talking to people. And they roll investigation checks to talk to people, persuasion checks to get people to talk to them. And basically, they talk to some soldiers, and the soldiers tell them, yeah, we're taking all these people to to the castle for some reason. Don't know why. Well, then I played a card that I look back at and wasn't my best move. Basically what I had happen is a familiar figure enters the tavern, and it was Fritzless. And here's why. When the players were going to go to Renovas, I knew that I wanted this idea of what happens if maybe Fritzless is patrolling the city a little bit. He's not so much patrolling, but they happen to run into him as he, goes to talk to, some soldiers, goes to work with soldiers. And that I kind of like that idea because it made the city feel more dynamic, but I think it didn't feel good as all of a sudden it felt like I was just throwing Fritzless right at the players. And perhaps it's because I haven't done it before. Maybe if I had kind of, done this kind of stuff prior, this wouldn't have felt less me just throwing Fritzless at the party, but I think that's what it kind of turned into. Fritzless is there, he fights them for basically around us. He basically says, oh, you guys are here? Well, crap, I'm going to kill you guys. The party's like, okay, the three characters who are there are like, oh, okay, okay. Well, they fight him, and they manage to deal some damage, actually. They got him to almost bloodied, and that's just using just the normal Lich stat block. They got him to almost bloody, and he managed to do some stuff, and, he tried to, hold them and get information out of them, and he, he draws. At one point, he kind of realizes, nah, this isn't going well. I'm done with this. And this was also me kind of looking at time and being like, my session's almost over. We gotta go. There's some other stuff that had to be done. That I had to do that other people had to do, that day. So we were like, crap, we gotta end this session. And I did something that, again, I'm not sure turned out great. And I had I had Fritzless and he casts Hold Person on Gray. He then pulls Gray to him using his telekinesis, and he opens a dimension door, and he slips through with Gray, and now Gray is captured, is taken by Fritzless, and basically that's where I ended the session. And this was, and again, after the end of the session, I didn't feel great. I don't think my players felt phenomenal. It was kind of awkward. And I texted players, and I basically sent a long text where I explained, hey, I apologize for the last session. I thought you guys were going to do this. This has kind of been my intention. I thought, I see us as being basically at the end of the campaign, a couple more sessions, a session where you guys kind of regroup, go to Renovas, maybe a session in Renovas, 1 or 2 in the castle where you kill Fritzless, kind of basically saying, you're almost done. We're almost done with this whole campaign. I'm kind of, I think, pushing you guys a little bit because I know that once we get through this, I can open this all up. I mean, if you guys really don't want to fight Fritzless right now, that's okay. I just need to know that. And talking to them a little bit, and I sent these texts out. I also sent a text where I basically told Elias and Danny. I sent them a text where I explained, after Fritzless disappears, all the people who had been in the bar and tavern kind of, as soldiers kind of come pouring in, these the soldiers who had been bodyguards of Fritzless, they pour in to kind of, attack you guys and take you guys down. The people kind of stow up and kind of like, hold them off just a little bit. And they tell you guys, like, go, run, get out of here. Come back with the rest of your party and save us, is what they tell them. And I described it as, you guys make it back to Renevas. Make it back, sorry, not to Renevas, but to Oovrengah. And the idea being that way there was a fresh start. That way it wasn't this awkward, okay, well, if like only Sonia, Esther, and Danny show up, well, Danny's still technically in Renevas and you two are at Oovrengah. How do you guys get to do things? I did what I said that last text. That way I could kind of clean slate. That way everyone started off at Oovrengah. And I think that worked well. And again, I talked to people more. And again, as I got a response from Sonia, and she talked about how, hey, we've been, going for about, 5 months in game. We finally just got back to Oovrengah. Our characters are going to want to rest. They're going to want a moment to kind of breathe. This was us kind of also as players taking a step back, taking something slower. And I said, and that made a lot of sense. And Danny explained that, yeah, they did kind of get a little caught up playing SimCity, but they certainly did want to go to Renevas. They just wanted to kind of do some other stuff first. And after getting that, I felt a lot better. And especially as I also thought, well, oh wait, okay, they also sent those players to Renevas in the first place, those 3 of them, to scout out the place, to get some information. And sure enough, they did that. So it kind of feels like they're going to go to Renevas next. I think that's what's happening. I'm not entirely sure. It was a bit of a rough session, but I think after talking to your players, it turned out. And again, I think that's one of the most important things you can do as a DM is when stuff doesn't make sense, when stuff is weird, talk to your players. Explain to them your point of view and ask for their point of view and try and fix that misalignment in goals. And I think now we're more or less aligned. There's still probably a little bit of wiggle room. But I think things are going to get better from here on out. And hopefully the next session will go better. We're supposed to play here this next Friday. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward mostly to kind of hopefully get back and fully realigned. So we'll see how things go then. As always, guys, thank you for tuning in. Stay cool.